last night on this very show, sitting right where you are last night, Montel Williams, without knowing any of this, without knowing that this weapon wasn't just in the house, but it was given to this kid. This is what he said.
Let's start holding these parents more accountable. Let's start locking those parents up for 15, 20 years. Then we're going to start seeing at least responsibility in the gun ownership world.
That is the question tonight. 4 counts, not manslaughter. He not just manslaughter, because he's facing involuntary manslaughter, but he's also facing murder charges, straight up murder charges. Will this make a difference?
I mean, to be honest, it does in some ways. And let me just say, I don't have kids, right? Okay. And I'm not saying that you having kids or not having kids means that you can't be a part of this conversation. But the part that I worry about the most is whether or not it's a slippery slope. I think in this case, the charges are fair, because even if this was the most responsible child of all time, why would buying a military-style weapon be a good idea to put in the hands of a 14-year-old, any 14-year-old? I don't care if they got straight A's. I don't care if they come home on time, eat their veggies, say their prayers. It doesn't matter. That is not the type of weapon that belongs in any child's hands. But I do think that I think about how potentially something like this could be weaponized against the most vulnerable parents. And that's where I get a little bit concerned. But I think in cases of obvious neglect with this, what would happen in the case of Michigan with the Crumblies and the school shooting there, yes, that makes sense. When you're knowingly putting these self-destructive things in the hands of children and you know they have problems, as a parent, you have to answer to that. I'm just not sure if the blanket answer is all parents need to be responsible for what their children do.
Well, the knowingly part is the key part here, because the police came to this family and said, we have reports that your son might be plotting an attack on a school. An attack basically like the one that happened. And then months later, you go out and you buy a weapon?
I put my kids on the bus today. It was the first day of school. And I was thinking to myself, I'm responsible for every aspect of their lives. I'm responsible for how my kindergartner is going to behave in class today, right? I'm hoping that he's nice to the fellow kids. I'm hoping that he behaves. I'm hoping he's not a bully. If I'm responsible for that, then of course I'm responsible for something like this. And whether that ends at 17 or 18 or 19, there's interesting discussions to have about exactly what the cutoff is. But for a 14-year-old, it seems pretty clear.
I mean, look, I just wonder, to Jamel's point, in terms of culpability, does it stop, begin, end with the parents? What about the FBI who visited the parents? Could they have done more? What about the school's obligation to protect other students? Should they have done more? What about law enforcement? I mean, there are so many questions here, Abby, and I get Montel's point, but there are a lot of responsible gun owners in this country. I'm from the South. Many people that I know have kids who are very young, who are competitive shooters, pistols, shotguns, ARs, and they're perfectly responsible. But
then don't you want to differentiate between the responsible ones?
I don't know that you can.
And the others?
I mean,
I understand the
I'm hearing what
concern,
you're saying, but a child. I don't know that even a child who is, maybe you do competitive shooting or hunting or whatever, I don't know that you could say that child is responsible for what they do with that weapon.
Well,
You
look,
as the
in
parent
those
are still
scenarios,
always
it's
responsible
a
for the
controlled
child.
scenario, right? So I want to
Right.
provide clarity there. But I'm just simply saying I just don't want to demonize every single person with an AR-15 or with guns, generally speaking. But again, back to my original point in terms of culpability, where does it begin? Where does it end? And could the other entities involved in this process, should they have done more? And I don't think we have an answer to that.
I think that that's a really fair point. It's where does the culpability lie and where is the structure for it? Because there have been states that have begun to pass some legislation about parents being more responsible for their children's actions. And I think to your point as well, what you were saying is that those most vulnerable might also get caught up in this. I'm sure there are plenty of parents out there who have been sounding the alarm, begging for help with their children and just not able to access resources to be able to get their children on the right path. My concern as well would be is, yes,
but
parents,
then there'll be a paper trail, right? There'll be a record.
However this legislation is written, because I'm sure many states will begin looking at this more aggressively now, is that you need to be able to set those standards for parents. Does it start with your child beat up someone at school, so now you're liable for the violent act, or for a violent act like that? Where are these lines? And these are always the toughest things to do.
But there is a level of culpability. Juries will decide. That's what worked in the Crumbly case, right?
But do you start going after black mothers who have young sons who may find themselves in trouble in the street, do prosecutors, mostly white, start going after them? Because I would have a problem with that.
No, well,
so where does this
we've
end?
already lived through that when black families were prosecuted under the notion of the dysfunctional family. So we've seen that happen, and it doesn't work in an effective way. I don't think we can talk about this in like an isolated solution. I'm a former teacher. If I knew, and I taught special education, and I had children that were emotionally disturbed, and if I had known that one of my parents bought one of my children a gun, and I called them my children because they were my students, I would be terrified. I would be calling that. So to even know that, nobody knew that. But for a parent to do that, for a child that has already been brought, saying that, if you listen to the audio, the father says, I'm pissed off to know that my son was talking about a school shooting. So if you're pissed off to know that your son is talking about a school shooting, I'm pissed off that you bought him the gun. And the parents now we have parents who will never see their children again. We have a whole 2,000 students who are traumatized, probably for the rest of their life with PTSD. Yeah. If you listen to the students that many of our anchors and reporters were interviewing, they were trembling with fear just having to relive that. But I don't think it's just about the parents being responsible. I think that this instance, this is the right case, and I think the Crumbly case was the right decision. Why do they have an AR-15? And this goes back to, why don't we have more mental health services? We always want to go to a one-shot solution versus using the word poorly, but a one-stop solution when we know that these issues are more complicated. And I've been thinking a lot about like, what would I do if I was alive 50 years ago? But I also think like, what will people think about us in 100 years when they see children year after year after year getting murdered in schools, and us arguing about whether or not we should have taken the weapons away from them to kill? I wonder what the answer would be.
I want to play what J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee for vice president, said about this when he was asked earlier tonight.
The Kamala Harris answer to this is to take law-abiding American citizens' guns away from them. You've got some states with very strict gun laws, and you've got some states that don't have strict gun laws at all. And the states with strict gun laws, they have a lot of school shootings. And the states without strict gun laws, some of them have school shootings too. So clearly strict gun laws is not the thing that is going to solve this problem.
Your thoughts?
Well, that's quite an answer. You know, and that's probably the part of the general apathy of this. Like, we have become the nation of like, well, we just can't do anything. We just, we have more guns, twice as many guns as people here. Like, that's the reality of where we are. And to your point, it's like when you think about if you're in a time capsule and you look back now at this time and what we would have done, the answer would have been nothing. That we're just spinning the inertia. First of all, Vice President Harris didn't say she wanted to take all the guns away. So he started with a lie right away. And people think the slightest bit of regulation, like, can we all agree, not a good idea if you're under 18 to have an assault rifle. Not a good idea. Don't care who you are. It is not a good idea to do this. There are very simple things that I'd like to think the rational part of our brains would say, it's probably not good that you can purchase a highly powerful weapon before you can actually vote and buy alcohol. Mm-hmm. And before you can actually drive a car. Like, what sense does that make?
Forgotten. Pardon. My fellow citizens.
It is strong. It's my duty to report
the true problems of our nation.
Vigorously developed, this resource will be of great benefit.
Where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause.
I will be eternally grateful for your support.